Hello everyone. Today we are here to do a fleet planner video to go through some transport manager training, and Roman will be going through different transport manager responsibilities, rules and regulations, and some information for you to have that you're aware when you're listed on someone's operator license application. So without further ado, I will prompt you, and I will be part of the discussion as well. So one of the first things that you need to be aware of as a transport manager on an operator's license application will be the driver's hours and EU or GB domestic. Roman, if you would like to kind of give the transport managers watching this video an overview on what kind of things they need to be aware of when they're on an operator license application.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Yes, before I do that, actually, I think just a little comment. This video or this training is aimed at people who already hold a transport manager CPC and who are potentially looking to become external transport manager to be named on someone's operator's license. So, so if you're looking for a course on how to pass the CPC exam, that's probably not the information for you, although you will need that later down the line. So yes, I will jump straight into the question onto driver's hours regulations. Now, obviously, as transport manager, we need to be able to establish what regulations we need to follow as a company. So obviously, vehicles above 3.5 ton by default fall into the EU driver's hours regulations, which means the use of tachograph is required. Unless the company is able to claim an exemption, then they obviously need to follow EU rules. If we have a situation where the EU driver's hours are required, then there are a number of responsibilities from the transport manager and from the company. So obviously we need to ensure that the driver's hours are observed. So the drivers don't break the regulations. Again, they need to understand it. So we need to train them how to do it. They need to be aware that they need to be using the driver card all the time. And obviously stuff like missing mileage, they need to be aware of, and part of the whole exercise of meeting compliance. So making drivers aware of that, to ensure that they use the card when they have to, that they download the information. That especially applies to agency drivers, drivers who go and pick up hire vehicles. There's normally common pitfalls in that area where the company hires a vehicle just for a few days, and then they realize that, oh, maybe forgot to download the tacho card, and sorry, the tacho card, but the actual vehicle unit. So
is there a key way to distinguish between whether a driver or a license holder needs to practice or stay compliant with EU or GB domestic rules? How do you distinguish between the two? Is there one kind of way to do that, or is there several points that need to be made on that?
Okay, so this information is available online on the government website. If you go on the .gov website, find the driver's hours regulations, you can find all the exemptions that are listed. And if you can't claim any of those exemptions, then that means you basically need to follow EU driver's hours regulations. Common exemptions are use of vehicle up to 7.5 ton for drivers moving tools and materials to complete his job, where the driving is not driver's main activity. So that could be an example for that. However, with this exemption, people need to be careful, because when you actually start becoming actual driver, so you maybe deliver goods between number of sites, then that changes things. So it's important to understand that if driving is your main activity, then you do fall under EU hours. So that's just one example on that. The record keeping is absolutely important for both. Okay, and understanding that record keeping on EU drivers' hours is obviously by using the tachograph. So for full analysis, we need to have a tachograph analysis system. We need to have company card in place, which is the company needs to order that. The company is responsible to obviously keep that card in date. So they are able to lock the vehicles in and also download the information. So having a procedure for bringing vehicle onto fleet and removing onto fleet, bringing the driver onto the books, and obviously dismissing driver or taking them off the books, having the proper procedure that we capture all the information is important. Then we obviously upload that information onto the driver's hours analysis system, and then we run the reports. So the example of reports on driver's hours, on EU hours, would be infringement reports. We need to let the drivers know if they do something wrong on the if they made any infringements, any mistakes on driver's hours, and then obviously that needs to be documented that we've informed them about this. So printing the reports and getting drivers to sign is quite important. I mentioned earlier the missing mileage reports. So this is where we download the information from the driver card and from the vehicle. Okay, and then the system combines this together, and any unallocated movements of vehicle will be shown on the report. Looking at this also is important, and obviously if someone drove without the card, or there was some vehicle movement without the card inserted, we need to have a reason for it. Example for that would be MOT inspection. That's exempt normally from the driver's hours regulations. So if the workshop are taking vehicle for MOT, then that can be normally claimed as outside of scope. But we obviously, as a company, we need to know about this. If I run the report for a week and I find out that I've got 500 kilometers unallocated, then obviously we need to address that problem, and we need to have records for that. Okay. Jumping onto the domestic hours, there are also requirements to keep records. Although you can, if there are exemptions from record keeping as well, depending on how much the driver is driving in a day. So it's very good to, obviously, if you fall under these regulations, to be aware of these requirements. However, from the good practice point of view, it's also very good to keep records anyway, regardless if you have to have them or not. There are two ways you can keep these records: via logbooks, or you can still choose to use tachograph to record these hours. And if you want to claim that you don't want to use, you're not going to use any records for your company due to minimal driving, you need to be obviously able to demonstrate that how you come to this conclusion, which again points you to keeping records, really. So it makes sense to keep records for your own safety and proper management of the driver's hours. Common mistake we see that is people think that, because if we ask you to keep records on the tachograph, by the tachograph on domestic hours, then that means you fall on EU hours. That's not the case. If you are on the domestic hours, you can still capture the information on the via the tachograph. So that's how it is. And in a similar way, you still need to analyze it, make sure that there's no mistakes, because the regulations are much different, but there is still requirements to be followed on both of them.
Thanks, Raymond. So on that note as well, based on what you've just discussed about record keeping for driver's hours rules and tachograph data, the other thing that you need to keep record of as a transport manager is vehicle maintenance and MOTs, things like that, all need to be kept up to date and tracked, especially when you've got an operator's license. Could you tell everyone watching this video a bit about vehicle maintenance and record keeping? What is the kind of duration that you need to have that for an operator's license, and any advice you can give as a transport manager yourself on that note?
Yes, absolutely. So again, I'll be answering this from the external transport manager angle, because if you're a full-time transport manager, then obviously you're present most of the time where the center of the operation is. So keeping these records is kind of much easier, because you see them coming in as they are done. So with external transport manager, you don't often have the opportunity to be every day on with the particular operator. But what is important is that you maintain the control, and you know when the inspections are due, and that you're able to inspect the inspections. Inspect the documents when they arrive after inspection. So first thing to remember, obviously, is booking the inspection in time, and then making sure that the driver is aware that they need to bring the vehicle for the inspection. So bring it to the workshop, or if it's internal, then it's made available for the internal inspection. So establishing that communication with the driver is very important, or with the management, that's who will be looking at the planner, and who will be giving instructions to the driver. That's quite important. Now, when we pick up the vehicle, we need to get that's the traffic commissioner's recommendation or guidance, really, that you should pick up the vehicle together with the inspection report. And why is that? Because how do you know that the vehicle is in a good roadworthy condition if you haven't got a report to back this up? So having that conversation with the workshop is important. And as we know from experience, that brings a number of challenges, because quite often the vehicles are inspected overnight, and the paperwork is not ready for the collection in the morning, and then obviously the vehicle is planned out to go out on the road. And this is where the transport manager needs to step in and make sure that this gap is minimized, and that you are absolutely certain to have the vehicle in a roadworthy condition on the road, and then you've got the documents to back this up. So the records. So I mentioned the inspection reports. Obviously, sticking to your frequency, and the main subject of this is obviously to how long we keep these records. There is a 15 months requirement to keep vehicle maintenance records. So obviously, safety inspections definitely fall into that bracket as a main thing, really, on the vehicle inspections, on the vehicle records. The second thing is obviously vehicle tachographs, tachographing calibration. Again, we need to have a document for that. If we are unable to locate the tachograph calibration, then checking the vehicle. Normally in the driver door there is a plate which shows when the tachograph was calibrated. So having that documented in the vehicle file is important, so we can plan the next inspection. Then we move on to vehicle MOT. Brake testing is quite a hot subject at the moment, because the brake testing need to be completed correctly, and this is this is quite common failure area where people don't keep the correct records or don't complete a correct inspection. And this is purely because miscommunication with the workshop or misunderstandings, or some certain people down the line may not understand the requirements. The vehicle's inspection mirrors vehicle MOT, okay, and that's why there is all the inspection manual numbers. So the vehicle inspection needs to mirror what is checked on the MOT. Now, if we have a situation where some of these items are not checked, so for example, the workshop may think, okay, we don't have a facility to complete a brake test, then therefore we're just going to leave that blank, okay, and that happens sometimes, and it's a transport manager's role to pick this up, because that way the inspection is incomplete. We've not completed a brake test. Emission test is another example. So sometimes I've seen the workshops don't tick this, and even like the normal housekeeping of keeping the documents readable. So I mean, I sometimes, especially handwritten reports, I find them difficult to read, and I don't understand what the inspector meant by writing in there. So clarifying these things, quite important, because by picking up this report, the transport manager needs to do a number of things and obviously pick up all the issues. So we mentioned picking up if everything was checked properly. We mentioned that the paperwork is tidy and readable, but also if there was anything reported on the inspection that had to be reported by the driver. That's quite important thing. Giving an example is, let's say the tire was below legal limit on the tire tread, and then the driver ticked off in the morning or just before they dropped off the vehicle for the workshop that the tire was fine, okay, and then the workshop is reporting actually the tire is below legal limit. So this is a very strong message to the transport manager that actually the driver didn't complete the check correctly, the check that they've done before they used their vehicle. So obviously that needs to be communicated to the driver, and it is a training matter and it is a disciplinary matter as well to address. So obviously the company needs to have a procedure for these type of things, and but normally communicating these things back to the drivers is significantly improving the compliance of the company. So that's quite important. So that records are kept for 15 months. Okay, we said about tachograph calibrations, vehicle MOT, any additional equipment, as in cranes, tail lifts. All these items need to be inspected. So we also want to keep records of those. The vehicle insurance, we want to make sure that we know that we've got documents for when needed. We want to touch on the, I mean, we need to be aware of the vehicle tax as well. So things like that we need to have on the vehicle file. Obviously, this can be stored in hard copy in a folder in the office, or it can be also stored online. As long as we are able to produce a hard copy on request, we should be fine. That's normally quite efficient way to keep the documents, especially with external transport managers, because if you're not there 5 days a week, you still should be able, as an external transport manager, to be able to access the information if you need to review something or access the information. Finally, on the vehicle maintenance and record keeping, the driver pre-use checks. Obviously, I mentioned that the drivers sometimes make a mistake on not spotting the serious defects on the vehicle. But bottom line is they do have a responsibility to check that that the vehicle is safe, and they need to have records for that. And we, as a company, as an operator, need to store these records to make sure that that we meet the operator license requirements. Now, generally, it's understood that if the driver doesn't report any defects, which means a new defect, and then we keep them between the inspections, and then we are able to dispose them. So this is to demonstrate that the vehicle is being checked on a regular basis. However, if there is anything reported on the defect, then we need to keep them for 15 months. Okay, so and opening a defect and closing it correctly in a timely manner is also one of the responsibilities a transport manager needs to do on the in ensuring that maintenance records are kept. Now, and I'll touch again on the electronic systems availability in here, because it is much easier to manage the vehicles if you've got drivers to completing the vehicle checks on the app, because that way you can see the reports on the screen. You can log in from anywhere and at any time, and then that's just available there. You see how many drivers completed the check. You can compare it to the drivers list or driver availability, and you know pretty much quickly who's completed the check, who hasn't, and also who reported a defect, so we can address that, okay, quite quickly. Most of these systems will give you opportunity to get email notification as well if there is a problem. Comparing to the paper records, where you imagine coming on site once a week as an external transport manager, so normally you pick up a pile of paper from your desk, and then you're trying to work through it to basically find out what's going on, where 90 or 95% of that information is purely someone basically completed a check, okay, and which is important, but it's not giving you much more than that. So that's just pretty much first of your 15 or 30 minutes wasted just to do a little simple admin thing. If you multiply that by all the weeks in a year, then that's going to come up to quite a significant time where you could have spent on the innovation or some other new ideas, or doing more thorough checks on the drivers. So it's an absolute time saver, and in an ever competitive environment in transport, that gives you a little bit of an edge over the competition, because you can keep tighter records and better records. So obviously we in Fleet Planner do promote our own app, and we strongly recommend using it because it's easy to use. It's got a very user-friendly system attached to it. It's built by transport managers for transport managers. So it's not just someone randomly thinking, in IT department to type up some system. It is basically with the user in mind, and quite effective.
With the defect rectification, it's a point that some people miss as well, in terms of making sure they keep records of it if a defect is reported. And software like ours and others do provide the facility for you to track the defect rectification and keep record of that as well. So that can be provided to the Traffic Commissioner's office if ever required by the Traffic Commissioner from a transport manager or the director of a company itself as well.
Yes, exactly, and I mentioned about keeping the new defects between the inspections, but to be honest, why shouldn't you keep it longer? If you, sometimes when there is some accident reported, which was some time ago, you need to go back to these dates. It's very good to have these records, available to you, and then you can demonstrate the full compliance history. So, keeping these records in organized way online is very it's really is a no-brainer these days.
Especially if you've got a large fleet as a transport manager.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to, and you've got someone picking at your brain to tell them when they had an MOT or a vehicle inspection on what date, and you can't remember it, and you've got to then get the stack of paperwork that you've got somewhere to find it. So it's a very good way to streamline all of these different tasks that you're responsible for as a transport manager. So based on that as well, so that was something that we were going to touch on as well for people watching this video as training, is what are the key transport manager's responsibilities? We've touched on driver's hours. We do have some other bits that we would touch on as well. Vehicle maintenance and record keeping are essential as well as part of your transport manager responsibilities. But is there any
Yes.
other things that a transport manager needs to be very aware of and aware that this is a big responsibility of theirs when they're managing a fleet of vehicles?
Yes, absolutely. So the easiest way to answer this question is basically pick up the operator's license, document, look at the undertakings. This is it. Okay, that's what their responsibilities are. You know, to obviously transport manager works with the company director or with the owner to make sure that these are met. But essentially, that's what it's that's the making sure that these things are met. So obviously in there we've got keeping vehicles
So
in the
yeah,
road.
so if you're going to mention the operator license undertakings, maybe I'll ask what are the operator license undertakings briefly to tell. So I'm sure the transport managers watching will be aware of this. But what are some of the operator license undertakings that we haven't mentioned that
Right. Okay. So I jumped a little
responsible
bit
for?
there, but okay. So what we've got is making sure that the vehicles are kept in roadworthy condition, making sure that the records are kept, that the driver's hours regulations are observed, that the driver vehicles are not overloaded. So we also like the road regulations are met. So speeding, things like that. We also need to ensure that traffic commissioner is informed about any changes to the operator's license. So anything is kept up to date. Anything is reported to traffic commissioner that's kind of inappropriate behavior from the drivers. So if people got points on the driving licenses, any prohibition notices, that's quite often overlooked, actually, because prohibition notice needs to be reported to traffic commissioner, and the operator needs to propose a plan or action that was completed to rectify the problem, a root cause of the problem as well. Changes in directors, like
What
kind of
about changes
general
in
keeping.
your location as a transport manager? If you
Yes,
move
absolutely.
from a different place and you're working between different jobs, is that something you need to make the traffic commissioner aware of as well?
Yes, so obviously ability to complete the job absolutely is important. The any if we need to keep the vehicle list up to date. So if we need to increase the margin, it's quite important that we apply for that. Taking vehicles off the operator's license, general management of that is quite important as well. I mean, I haven't got the list in front of me to mention, but I think I've covered most of that. I mean, then what's also important that not all of these undertakings are very clear what actually you need to do. Okay,
In
however,
practice,
what's behind them is, for example, to making sure that the drivers keep to the road regulations. Is what sort of training do we give them? Okay, do we check the driving licenses? Are they aware that they need to report any issues to the driver's license, for example? This is something that's quite important. So yeah.
you touched on just then as well earlier about having policies in place that maintain discipline within with drivers, and you've obviously just touched on then about drivers' qualifications and training. So could you touch a bit or explain a bit to those watching about what kind of internal training as a transport manager that you could overlook within your kind of operator license and the company that you're working for to ensure compliance with the transport operations that you're managing?
Yes. So I would start with declarations. Okay, we want to know that the drivers produce the latest driver license, and that we want them to declare that they will obviously every time they drive that they're going to be fit to drive. They will not take risk on whilst under influence of, for example, some medicine that's affecting driving. That there will be some communication established, or strong communication, shall I say, established between the management and the driver if there is any doubt of the ability to drive. I mean, obviously, alcohol use, illegal drugs goes without question. That needs to be absolutely written down, that this is a big no-no, and as a company we need to be quite strict on this. And unfortunately, these days, sometimes this needs to be enforced. Because some people, unfortunately, are not fit to be driving. So there needs to be that in writing. So that's in the form of declaration. We want to put that on paper. We want to know from the drivers if they actually drive or work for someone else when they don't work for us. That's for working time directive regulations. So again, that's another declaration that we need to get them to sign. It's a very good practice to do eyesight check. Simply asking drivers to read the number plate of a car from 20 meters, and then writing this down. So again, we are not allowing to, as a company, for people to drive who are not meeting basic requirements for the driver's license. Then we also move on to the driver handbook, where we communicate to the drivers what's acceptable in terms of, what the requirements are. So we want to mention pre-use vehicle checks. We want to again mention the acceptable fitness to drive. We want to mention the use of mobile phone, for example. Or not used of the mobile phone, because obviously even hands-free is a big question mark, as the evidence suggests that that it does have a significant impact on the concentration whilst driving. So we want to put that in the driver handbook. Also, defect reporting. Obviously, I mentioned previous vehicle checks, but defect reporting, what the correct procedure is. Accident reporting. What we expect them to do. Everything, things like that need to be communicated. Speed limits, adherence to the speed limits according to the vehicle type they drive. Obviously, we need to look at the fleet, and because if someone drives 18-ton truck every day and we ask them to drive 7.5-ton, do they know what the speed limits are for this vehicle on certain road types? Okay, and that sometimes needs a reminder. A big thing is vehicle height or vehicle dimensions. Do we communicate, especially having foreign drivers, do they understand imperial metrics system, for example? Do they know how to convert it? Because sometimes on the bridges we'll have in meters, sometimes in feet, and just having that communicated to the drivers can be a difference between striking a bridge or not. So this is quite important. Now, understanding about driver's hours. Okay, so this is always a big subject, because drivers are exposed to that on a daily basis. Having breaks in the right time and understanding the regulations. Now, I do a little test for the drivers that I work with. I give them 20 questions on paper to answer, and surprisingly, not many are able to answer everything. Okay, but so what that does is it invites opportunity to discuss these things, and then we can have a lively discussion about I thought it was this, I thought I was that, and especially when we get drivers coming from a different industry. Somebody could have been working 7 to 5, and then all of a sudden they find themselves doing nights out, pulling containers. Obviously, they are exposed to totally different issues. So understanding this is quite key, especially for new drivers. All these things go into driver handbook. Okay, so we need to be writing this down, telling them, okay, if you fail to do that on certain things, which we find unacceptable, you will be dismissed, because we cannot accept dropping below a certain level, because ultimately the vehicles are potentially dangerous to other road users, to the public, and we've got the responsibility to keep them in as safe as possible. Now, obviously, some matters would can be improved by training, and then again, we want to put that in the handbook as well. So, so obviously, having the handbook, that's kind of number of things I mentioned. I'm sure there is more that can be added, especially which is stuff that's specific to the company. But communicating that handbook is quite important, because what we find is drivers just want to drive. They don't want to be involved with some kind of reading, some kind of documents, and they just think, oh, I've been driving for 20 years. Thank you very much. I know everything. Okay. So if you put someone some paper in front of them, they will just simply sign this, so you walk away. That's not very effective training. So we want to invite a conversation. Sometimes even an argument is a very good conversation, because that way some difference of opinion brings up the conversation. And I mean, I can give an example about vehicle idling. For example, just a driver says, "Well, I need to keep the vehicle warm for the because it's cold in there." But then when we talk about the environmental impact and things like that, that means the message is getting across. So sometimes having an argument is not a bad thing, because you can actually see that the message was communicated, and then it will be talked about as well. So that's having effective training is good. It is what you want, really. So toolbox talks, not just getting the papers signed by the drivers, because that's not very constructive.
Certainly. I don't think we're suggesting that you argue all the time with your drivers, though. But
No, absolutely not.
it is an effective way, if need be, to get people to speak to you openly about what they know and don't. So, but yes. One of the other things that you do need to check as a transport manager, and I thought, Roman, you could touch on as well, again, is driver's qualifications. I know that with that in mind, that you do need to check that they're up to date, that they've done the relevant training, and that is up to date as well as a transport manager. Could you give a bit of a detail or a brief overview on what kind of things you would suggest an external transport manager does to keep up to date with the driver's qualifications?
Yes. So obviously, driving license. Very simple. First step, need to make sure that they've got correct driver's license. We check it. The recent recommendation is that we do it every 3 months, and we have records for this. So going on DVLA website, requesting drivers to give us a driver license check code, logging in, pulling the document. Obviously, we want to know the expiry date of the document. We want to know expiry date of the medical from the driver, because sometimes, quite often, this is a different date. So understanding this is quite important. Then we've got the driver card, the digital card. If they use one, then they need to have one, and obviously having an expiry date for that one is quite important. Driver CPC, driver qualification, which is another expiry date that we need to monitor. However, we also need to, as a company, we need to ensure that there is a plan for this to be worked on for them. Not every 5 years to kind of 5 to 12 find out that, oh, we've got our drivers didn't complete CPC. Then it becomes very difficult to address. Why not use this opportunity to basically kind of put it with the continuous development of driver and keep it do it on a regular basis. Further qualifications is obviously any additional equipment fitted to the vehicle. So cranes, do they know how to use them, and obviously do they have correct recognized industry recognized certification for that, and if is it kept up to date. That's quite key. Obviously, driving license points. We want to know what they do. If they have anything that's risky for the business, then obviously that needs to be addressed as well. Moving along, these days, I think vulnerable road user awareness training is quite important, actually. To reduce the risk of having a threat. There are a number of courses. Force accreditation is something that needs to definitely be mentioned here. There is some e-learning courses on that, and what's good is that the driver section is actually free of charge. Any driver can log in, create a login for themselves, and use that training. It's very there are very good e-learning tutorials on these subjects on transport. So this resource is there as well, and it's a very good one for the drivers to be aware, especially if we've got people who came from different country and maybe got their driving license under the different standards as well. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, just to kind of conclude then, we've gone through some of the main different responsibilities and different regulations and rules that you need to observe as a transport manager. I hope that this was helpful to those transport managers watching this training. And if you have any other further questions about some of the things we've mentioned to help streamline some of the things that you've done, as we've kind of emphasized, ultimately as a transport manager, keeping your records in place and being able to streamline anything possible for you is going to be beneficial. It's going to save time, and it's going to make your life and your job a lot easier. So if you are interested in Fleet Planner software to help kind of facilitate that easy kind of ongoing compliance, or if you're interested in knowing a bit more about course accreditation, then please feel free to call Fleet Planner, and one of us would be more than happy to discuss that with you. Thank you for watching this Fleet Planner video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't always argue with the drivers. It's not always the best option, but sometimes it is. Thank you for watching, guys. Thanks, Roman. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers.